My name is Marcin Szałek. I am Flutter developer since the alpha release. And today I would like to talk about scrolling in Flutter. Now, first of all, I guess that my clicker is not working. Maybe it will start. First of all, why such a topic? Why should I talk on scrolling? So initially, I wanted to make a talk on state of Flutter web in regards to creating like awesome, beautiful UIs, because I believe that the Flutter web is getting maturer every day. And I just wanted to check if you can do like awesome UIs on Flutter web. However, when I was checking the like cool designs that I would implement for this talk, I have noticed that most of cool like the animation effects on web actually are heavily dependent on scrolling. Therefore, I decided to not go into the web, but into scrolling and dig more of how to use scrolling to achieve awesome Flutter effects. So for this talk, I will show you some designs that I found and that I have figured out that would be pretty cool to share with you how to implement those. So in this talk, we will go through everything you see here, and I will show you how to do it. And you might think that some of those things are actually really complex and that are totally out of your reach. However, while doing those designs, while implementing them, I have noticed that actually with just knowing few simple tricks, all of them become very, very easy. And since it would be wasteful to not share those tricks with you, I will do it today. So let's get started. First amazing scrolling tip that I got for you is that you can calculate widget position on the screen. Now, what does it mean and why do we care? I will show it by example. And the first example is the parallax effect that I found on WhatsApp application. So it only happens on the iOS WhatsApp application. So Android users cannot actually see it. But if you look closely on the images there, you can see mostly on the lake image and the mountain image that they tend to move a bit while user scrolls. And I think that is really cool effect. And since it's super easy to implement it, I want to show you how to do it. Clicker is not helping me today. Let's have our widget that we call single image. We will start with getting the render object from our context using find render object method. Now, I will not explain to you what exactly is render object because it would be a separate talk just for that. I will just show you how to use it in our use cases. So first, we'll get the render object, and we'll use it to call local to global, which will provide, in the end, the offset y. I call it offset y, which is basically the distance between the top of our widget and the top of the screen. So how many pixels from the top of the screen is our widget placed? We'll use it later. What we can also have is we can get the device height. For example, we can just get it from the media query. So the device height will be the white arrow there. And when we have those two, we can just get the relative position. So if we divide one by another, we can get the relative position of our widget. So if it's on the very top, it will be 0. In the middle, it will be 0.5. And if it's on the bottom, it will be 1. And when we have this relative position, we can use it as an alignment in our image. So here I have relative position minus 0.5. So the values will change like that. And what it will cause is that the image inside the widget will be aligned on the top. It will be aligned slightly to the top, and on the bottom, it will be aligned slightly to the bottom. Here I used decoration image, but those parameters are also there for asset image, network image. It doesn't really matter. Now, having that will cause this effect, which I believe is pretty cool effect. And as you can see, it doesn't really require a lot of work to achieve it. So that is the first tip. So you can always calculate widget position on the screen. However, some of more experienced developers may notice that actually just having this in the build method will not cause this kind of effect. That is because even though we are scrolling, the build method is not called every time we want. We need to somehow make it happen. And we could add just a listener to scroll controller and call setState to just rebuild the whole page. However, this would result in rebuilding our whole scroll view on every scrolling effect. So we can do it better by using scroll controller as an animation for animated builder. What it means? We have our normal widget. Here it is ListView builder that is using scroll controller. But if we look closer to the scroll controller, we can see that it actually extends the change notifier. And when we look at the change notifier, we can see that it implements listenable. Now, listenable, if you look at the animated builder, is right here. And it is the actual parameter of animated builder. It's not animation, it's just listenable. So what we can have is in our widget, we can wrap our widget we want to rebuild with animated builder and pass the scroll controller as an animation. Now, in that case, in our WhatsApp example, it doesn't really matter as everything we display are images and it wouldn't really change much regarding the performance. But here I have another example for you. This is the official website of Very Good Ventures. You might have heard of them. And when I was on their website, I have noticed nice effect on scrolling. You can see the cards at the bottom when the user scrolls are slightly moving in while scrolling. I mean, they're slightly gaining visibility and are scaling to get bigger, right? I believe it's clear. So to have effect like that, we would have our widget. I will call it Very Good Wrapper, which has a child and a scroll controller. And what we'll do is first, we will wrap the widget in the animated builder using the controller. So it's the trick we have previously get to know. Then we will use the same thing as previously. So we will have the render object, get the offset Y, and get the device height. This is the exactly same thing. Then what we'll do is we can calculate the height visible, which is just the difference between those two. And this is the orange arrow at the image. And then what we can get is the widget height. So while height visible was the amount of pixels that are visible on the screen, the widget height will mean how much this widget actually should take. And when we have that, we can just divide y by one by another to get the percentage value of how much is this widget shown. The clamp method is just here to make this value from between 0 and 1 to make sure we don't have like 110% that the widget of the widget shown. And when we have this how much shown, please work with me, clicker. When we have the how much shown, we can just use it to calculate, in our case, scale and opacity. So the scale will transform from 0.8 to 1 and the opacity from 0.25 to 1. And we'll use it in the widgets transform.scale and opacity. What you can see here is that the child widget is being reused. It's not rebuilt every time. We only make the transform and the opacity on the scroll, but the child remains untouched. Therefore, we are avoiding any like performance problems. And having that, we will have this effect. And you can also see that while we are scrolling up again, the images are getting smaller. And notice that we don't need any animation controllers. We don't really need like any complex things to do it. It is everything that is needed is right on the screen in front of you. So just before the talk, I have added one more thing in here because while animated builder is cool, it means that you need a scroll controller to be passed to your down in the tree to your widget. But what we can do is use the change notifier provider instead, because as I have shown you, scroll controller is actually change notifier. So instead of having, so right now we have the animated builder example, right? And what we can do is we can just pass the change notifier provider, use change notifier provider to pass the scroll controller, and then use the consumer. And it will also cause the widget you want to rebuild every time scroll controller changes. So this is another example of how you can optimize your rebuilds with scroll controller. So that was tip number 2, that you can use animated builder. Now tip number 3, stack is great for parallaxes. And what do I mean by that? Here's the example that we will focus on, where you can see at the start of the animation, there is this parallax effect where pyramids move in a bit different speed than everything else, and the sand moves over the pyramids also in a different speed. So on the scroll, each of those components can like go one on top on another. I will let you see it one more time. Yeah, and to achieve this effect, we will use stack because stacks are great for parallaxes. So we have our list view. Inside this list view, we will have our normal content of our page, which will be below this parallax effect. We will wrap the list view inside a stack because stacks are great for parallaxes. And we will add few positioned items. Now, what those positioned items are the components of our parallax effect. And what you can see here is that each of those is aligned to top, but in slightly different way. So all of them are using the offset. The offset is the scroll controller's offset, but they're multiplied by different number. Therefore, when user scrolls, each of those components will move according to the scroll, but in different speed. And this will cause one to come onto another. Now, to make everything work, we will have to add a container inside our list view to just move it one screen below, so it's below our parallax widgets that we want to use. And everything together will look like this. So because offset changes, each of those elements gets to the top, but in different speed. And therefore, they can cover one on another. So that was tip number 3. Stack is great for parallaxes. Now, you may have seen this example in one of my previous talks, but I will expand it a bit in this talk with the tip number 4, which is init state doesn't go well with scrolling. And what do I mean by that? First of all, let's see again this, this design. And you can see that there are elements that are fading in or like translating from outside of the screen towards the screen once a user is reaching them, right? So let's think at first, how can we implement it? So we'll have our page, and normally what you would think of doing is start with some animation controller that you'd init in the init state, provide the vsync, provide the duration. Then you drop your widget in the animated builder widget to make it rebuild. And then provide the builder method. In our case, it would make the widget go from 100 pixels below up to its position. So it would just move upwards. And now the question is, because this will not cause the animation to actually run, we need to call the forward method. And there is a temptation to just call it in the init state. But why cannot we do it? So when we have the ListView, even if you're using the ListView builder, you can think that Flutter will only render the objects that are visible on the screen. However, it's not true. Flutter will also render a few objects, like the few widgets below and above what is currently being visible. And the reason for that, and this is called cache extend. And the reason for that is that Flutter wants to have those widgets below and above rendered so that if user scrolls quickly, we already have something to show him. So it makes the whole animation smooth. However, it also means that your widget can be rendered even before it got visible for the user. The animation can even start and finish just like below the screen of the user, so he will never see it. There is a temptation because the cache extent is the parameter in the ListView, and what you theoretically could do is say, hey, by default it's 250, I believe, and you could set it to 0. So I don't want any cache, just render it when it's time for it. However, this will cause your scrolling to be basically laggy because it is actually needed there. So the cache extent needs to stay, and therefore the animation controller forward cannot be in the init state. But what we can do is the same trick as previously. So we can wrap our widget in the animated builder using the scroll controller. And in the builder method, we can again get the offset y and get the device height, the same thing as previously. And then we can just see if the offset y is smaller than device height. What it means is we can see if the widget has started to be visible on the screen. There is also the check of animation controller is dismissed to make sure that we don't run this method every time, because this is the build method, so it can be run a lot of times, and we want to have animation controller that forward only once, and then we just return a child. Notice that we don't actually affect the child, the building of the child. We only want to start the animation at the exact moment it started being visible. And what's also worth noting is that here we have been using some like my awesome widget. However, notice that this is the only way, this is the only place where we actually use this widget. Therefore, it could be abstracted, and all of this can be just a wrapper. So you won't have to write like 30 lines of code for every widget you want to animate on scrolling. And with all of this, we can have nice animations of the elements just when they start being visible. And this is especially, I think it is especially worth noting on web because, well, I've just saw a lot of problems with that. Yeah, so that was the tip number 4. Init state doesn't go well with scrolling. So let's go to the tip number 5, which is you can use stack to replace widgets. And again, why do we care? I have found very cool effect on the Kuberto page where you can see that the user is scrolling, but the images stay in place until he ends like this section, and then the image scrolls back to the top. So you can see that user scrolls, the image stays, and then it goes back. I mean, it goes up. And what's important is that it scrolls from the bottom, right? So there's scrolling, the user stays in the place, and then there's scrolling again. And how can we achieve it? Because it's super easy. So first of all, we have a page widget. The page widget is totally static page that has row with text and the image and the way of placing them. Nothing interesting happens here. And we can have the page view with 5 of those pages. Now, what you can see here is that we are having the page snapping false. By default, page view will make, what page view will do is that if you end the scroll between the pages, it will animate towards the closest page in shortcut. But on web, we cannot actually have it like that because it would be terrible for the user to like scroll a bit and then get back to the top, right? We cannot have this kind of effect. So we have to disable it by page snapping false. We are setting the scroll direction vertical to have like vertical scrolling, and the page controller will behave very similarly to the scroll controller. And this will look like that. So we'll just have the 5 page views, the 5 pages, sorry. But obviously it is not everything. So we can go back to our page and we can add some more customized logic. What we will have here is we will see if so what we want to have is to hide those images so we want to display this image only before the page is equal to 1 and after the page is equal to 5. So basically up to 1 and from 5 we want to display the image. And this is the check. It is very simple. And here we just like add this logic. This will provide this effect. So basically we just want to hide the images from the pages when the page is between 1 and 5. All right. So after we did it, what we can do is, as I said, you can use stack to replace widgets. So we will use the stack and we'll have the opposite condition. So previously it was smaller than 1 and greater than 5. Now we say that if the page is between 1 and 5, have a widget wrap in alignment to have the great position, ignore pointer to not mess up with our scrolling, size box to provide the proper dimensions of the widget, and a stack with 5 images. So those are the 5 images that we will want to show on the right side of our screen. Now, what is the stack image? The stack image is just an image that basically is being hidden if its index is greater than a page. Now, +2, you don't really need to care about it. Basically, for every image that we show, we can say, hey, hide this image if, or actually show this image if the index is greater than the page. And what it means is that basically once the page changes, the image will change as well, because we had them all in a stack. Therefore, when we hide one, the another will show. And this is very close to what we had in the design. However, in the design, we had this nice animation. So let's do it as well. If we replace the Boolean of should we show a widget with the percentage of how much we should show the widget. So basically, if we just see how much the given page for image has been moved, we can use this percentage moved to some sort of, well, like changing of displaying of the widget. I've used clip path with my custom wave clipper, but it could be opacity, it could be transform, it could be scaling, doesn't really matter. And with just adding that, we will achieve this effect. And the only part you haven't seen is the wave clipper, which is like totally subjective thing to do. All the logic of having this effect, you have seen it. And those are those 5 amazing scrolling tips. You can calculate widget position on the screen. You can use scroll controller for animated builder or provider. You can use stack to get awesome parallax effect. You shouldn't use init state when you want to have animations with scrolling. And again, you can use stack to replace widgets to create some very customized effects. Now, if I ended my talk now, I believe there would be a question in the QA. What about slivers? Because we have been told that the slivers are the thing to have this customized scrolling and those like cool effects with scrolls. And the answer is yes. I could provide a separate talk just on slivers. What I wanted to show you today is that you don't have to use slivers to create awesome effects. You can use just your normal widgets, the ListView, the scroll controller, the transforms, opacity, whatever you want. And usually you can replace, well, not often, you can replace slivers with just normal behaviors if you just know about those tips I have shown you. However, sometimes slivers are actually much easier to use than, for example, replacing our widgets in stack. Unfortunately, I will not show you how to implement this design, but I will just tell you that here is the design from Design Course YouTube channel. And you can see that there is the animation that is driven by the scroll. So you can see that the scroll is moving, the whole page is standing still, and the animation is like reactive to the scroll. And it can be easily done with slivers as well. Actually, in this example, it's persistent sliver header or sliver persistent header, something like that, which will achieve this effect. Now, if you want to see how can it be done, there's the link below, feedev.io/scroll, when you can find the link to GitHub and see the code. Yeah, so the question that I think should be answered here is, so can we have awesome scrolling on web? And the answer is, well, yes, but not really. And you may be now wondering, I've been talking for like 30 minutes of how easy it is to use scrolling in Flutter and how easy it is to have these awesome effects. Why can't we use it on web? And the answer for that is because of the mouse scroll wheel. So here we have this parallax effect of WhatsApp, and you can see it's very smooth when you use touchpad. But then you start using scroll wheel on your mouse, and it gets really, really junky. Right? You can see that on touchpad, everything works fine. Or if you'd use just drag to scroll. But then the scroll wheel, I think it's not really, it makes us not ready for using awesome scrolling effects on web, at least not always. Another example is from the Cuberto page. You can see that the user stops scrolling. There is this very gentle like animation of like some idle scrolling. And again, I've tried to make it happen using scroll wheel, and I failed. I wasn't able to do it. So I don't think you can always have very smooth scrolling on web. And the last reason why I think that we can't actually use scrolling on web is this example. This is like a very cool example when on scroll, there is a new page with the animation. And I've actually implemented it for this talk. However, here I used, for example, page view, and it works really fine if you drag by mouse. But then if you start using scroll wheel, you can have effects like that. And I don't think you would really want to have it in your application. So in general, I believe that scroll animations, yes, you can do it in Flutter. However, scroll animations on web, it depends. It depends, and you need to be, you need to always remember that you have to handle the scroll wheel, which is problematic. So if you wanna learn more and you wanna go deeper into handling scrolling in your application, I have created like a live coding tutorial on YouTube where you can see how like hands-on I do this design. On left, there is the design. On the right, there is the actual implementation in Flutter. And there I also use page view in that case to achieve all those cool like customized effects. So go to feedev.io/sy animation to see how it can be done. Also, every example I have shown you today is deployed on feedev.io/scroll. So you can go to that page and see it by yourself, what works, what doesn't work. And in the top right corner, there is the icon to the GitHub. So all the code that you have seen is already there. So with that knowledge, with all the tips that I've showed you, and with the code that you have access to, I think that I can officially and unfortunately only verbally announce you certified scrolling masters. And I really think that it doesn't require any more knowledge than what I've showed you today to have really awesome scrolling effects. And you should be confident enough to just go to your work today, tomorrow in the morning, and just announce that you can do awesome scrolling as a Flutter developer, because you really, really can. My name is Marcin Szałek. You can find me on Twitter by Marcin_Szałek. Thank you very much for listening. And I guess I give back microphone to Mati.